So what's the Grape Explorer talking about today? Well, we are talking about Bordeaux, and we're going to include a chateau today in our Grand Cru Classé series, and we are going to bring up what I always call the past, the present, and the future, which I think is very, very important in Bordeaux today to explain. But I'm going to give you an opportunity I'm going to share a story with you, actually, on a property that I visited many years ago. And this is the property that we're featuring today. It's called Chateau Carbonnieux. Carbonnieux is called Pessac, or they're in the area of Pessac, I should say. And Pessac Leognan, and if you can see, is part of the Grave region, but Pessac Leognan has what they call a classification, which you get the classification of the Medoc, and then you have the classification of Saint-Emilion. So Pessac Leognan actually does have its own classification as well. And I'm going to point out that where it's actually located in the map. You can see Pessac Leognan clearly right here. You can see the city of Bordeaux here, and the proximity of Pessac Leognan to Bordeaux is quite close. So, and then you have the river Giron, which runs right here. So the river is very, very famous here. And, you know, this area, because it's called Pessac, is in the Grave region. And when we talk about Bordeaux, it is interesting that Grave is the only name that actually shows up where it identifies the soil composition there, because it's gravel, it's rocks, obviously. The fascinating thing about Pessac Leognan, like from Chateau Carbonnieux here, is that they make white and red equally. So a lot of the chateaus there, I would say most of the chateaus in Pessac Leognan make a white and a red, whereas in the Medoc, of course, they don't make a white wine for a lot of these other properties. But I wanted to give a little bit of a story to tell. I was visiting the property one year with a client. It was it was 2003. So we're talking, you know, we're closing in here close to 20 years. And what I would really want to highlight was when we were there was the gentleman who was the owner of the property. His name was Anthony Perrin. And Anthony was actually the president of the UGC at that time, which is a very, very important job. So we had a tour of Chateau Carbonnieux, which is a magnificent property historically. When we got to the end of the tour, Anthony came out and greeted us, and he wanted to show us the private cellars where they had old vintages of Carbonnieux. And he asked my colleague and I, he said, "Oh, you're from America?" And he said, "Yes, we're from the United States." And he said, "You know, we've had quite a number of your compatriots come and visit us over the years. Would you like to see a letter from one of your compatriots?" You know, and I was like, "Okay, we can see the letter." So we wait, and he brings out this letter, and it was dated 1784, and it was a visit from Thomas Jefferson on the property. Thomas Jefferson at that time was the American ambassador to France. But what his job was at that time was to visit a number of properties, and he wrote a letter to Chateau Carbonnieux highlighting his trip, saying, "Chateau Carbonnieux, the white wine, will go down in my memories as one of the finest white wines in all of Bordeaux," and had the seal on top of it where it said United States of America. Now do the math, 1784. We were not that old of a country at that time. And I actually told Anthony at the time, I said, "Wow, that should be in the Smithsonian Institute." And he said, no Smithsonian Institute. It's in Chateau Carbonnieux's. We have a library here, and we obviously have a dedication to Thomas Jefferson, which was fabulous. And when I found out that one of our founding fathers we were in the footsteps of a founding fathers, that really blew me away. Of course, I was a history major, so when I hear things like that, it really gets me going. And Chateau Carbonnieux here, this is fabulous. This is 2018. You can actually see on the label, this beautiful label, it has a picture of an oyster shell. So if you look at this label in front, you can classically see this. And there's a reason for that. Not too far away in Bordeaux, you've got what's called the Basin of Arcachon right here. So Pessac Leognan is quite close to this area. What is this area famous for? It's famous for oysters. And, you know, this whole area is oyster beds. So what goes great with Pessac Leognan is fresh oysters from Arcachon. If anybody ever wants to go to Bordeaux, you have to make a trip to Arcachon. And then you have to taste a bottle like Chateau Carbonnieux with your oysters. And then when you taste this wine, It is just absolutely sumptuous. It has that mineral tone, that bright acidity that would go perfect with oysters. I can see why they put an oyster shell on here. Again, this is a Grape Explorer, talking about Grand Cru Class A and talking about beautiful wine.